The artist is not a person endowed with free will who seeks his own ends, but one who allows art to realize its purpose through him. Carl Jung. This is episode 1 of Citadelium, a show on rebuilding our civilization, and I am your host, Yuri Degaya. As this is the first episode of Citadelium, I would like to introduce myself first. I come from the Bitcoin background. I started engaging in Bitcoin at the end of 2012, and since then I really understood that Bitcoin had this great potential to make a real change in the world, and the world, in my mind, is far from perfect. It cannot be made perfect, however, it can be improved upon by large. And Bitcoin has this potential due to its hard monetary policy. It is essentially the hard money of the 21st century, something that competes with its predecessor, physical gold. Bitcoin is normally considered digital gold in our time. So as I went deeper and deeper into the Bitcoin rabbit hole, I started a couple of businesses, and at this time I'm running L2B Global, which is a financial services company and a technology provider for the Bitcoin economy of the future. We consider Bitcoin as the next reserve currency of the world, and so we treat it as such, and we build infrastructure that will help the world transition into this new paradigm. At the beginning of this year, 2020, I decided to start putting my thoughts, everything I know, into written word. And this is how I started my blog at thegaia.co. I wrote about various topics, mostly Bitcoin, and then when I got really interested in the concept of building citadels, I started writing about citadels more, and I got a lot of engagement from people. People are really interested in this concept, which gave me a lot to think about. So I actually created a separate category for these blog entries called Citadelium, which later became this show. As I explained in one of my recent blog posts, I found it really beneficial to write my thoughts down and share them with people. And it didn't really matter to me if it was good writing or bad writing. As long as I kept writing, I felt like I could improve with time. And well, the result was really good because I started receiving emails and tweets and direct messages from various people all over the world who were really interested in the topics that I was covering. And the topics range from politics to economics to some technical issues with Bitcoin. So I really thought that I was onto something here, and I also understood that there are more media in the world that allow one to share his thoughts with the audience, with different audiences essentially. I remember a few cases of my friends who started their own podcasts and videocasts, and they have seen quite a good success with these platforms because a lot of the people these days, they don't really like reading, or they like alternating reading and watching and listening. So podcasting and videocasting allows to cover that extra target audience. Essentially, people go to the gym, they drive home or to work, and they like to tune into something of their choice because we live in this world of the 21st century information age where you are bombarded with random information from all the sides, including TV and radio stations. But today you can really choose what you want to hear or to watch, and this is why podcasts are getting really, really popular. You can tune into the favorite podcast of the day and listen to exactly what you want to hear. This is the reason why I decided to start and rather expand the Citadelium platform into the video and audio media. What will be the format of the show? Well, I haven't decided it completely, but the first episodes will be solo, in which I explain some of the concepts that I have on my mind. At the same time, I don't mind having guests and interviewees at some point during the show because there's definitely a lot of people who share the same ideas, and I would like to hear their opinions on things, and I would like to spark discussions on the topics that we're going to cover here. Let me tell you a little bit about the recording process. Because this is a new endeavor for me and I don't possess very high skills in this regard, I will record the shows in many different takes and then I will just combine them into a show, which is not really visible in the audio version of the show. However, if you watch the video, you can see how there are transitions between different topics and different bits and pieces of the show. Please bear with me. I will learn how to speak more eloquently as time goes and as I practice more and more. Hopefully by episode 100 I will be able to record a whole 1 hour show without ever interrupting the camera. Where will the show be hosted? At the beginning I chose YouTube, BitChute and Anchor.fm to host the show, and you can find it there by the name of Citadelium. At some point I really want to self-host all the episodes on my own server, on my own website. However, right now, for the sake of efficiency and a quick start, I would like to host them on the platforms that have the highest distribution rates out there. We all know that some of these platforms engage in censorship, and the ideas that I'm going to cover in my show are not really mainstream. As a matter of fact, they are far from being mainstream. So at some point, I fully expect being either censored or completely deleted and cancelled. This is why I keep all local copies of my show, and I will, whenever I figure out a way to self-host efficiently and at the same time distribute these shows efficiently, I will completely switch to self-hosting. As you can see from the description, the show is about rebuilding the civilization. So I'm not going to talk about Bitcoin extensively. However, this will be a topic that will go as a thread through some of my shows, because I think Bitcoin is really this monumental achievement of our century that will allow very radical changes in the world. If we talk about rebuilding civilization, does it mean that the civilization has been destroyed or is being destroyed? I think this is the case, and I think this process of decivilization is well underway. This process is multifaceted and it concerns many different areas of our lives. The primary area, I think, is money, the money that we have. And this is why Bitcoin is extremely important, because the money that we use right now and what is built on top of it, our economic and financial system, is, in my opinion, completely fraudulent. It is fake. So this is why it will be covered to some extent throughout my shows. At the same time, because the monetary base is fake, everything else in life is affected by it. And you will see how it does so in future shows. What is affected by the fake monetary base that we have right now? Well, all kinds of things like our culture, our political systems, and even our food. I don't really need to tell you that the current state of the world is far from being what it can be, far from realizing its true potential. All you need to do is just to look out the window, and you may live in a nice neighborhood or not, It doesn't really matter. You can read the news, or you can scroll through the Twitter feed, and you will see that you are constantly bombarded with negative news. Everything is bad all the time, every single day. That does not mean that there's nothing good in the world. A lot of good stuff is happening. However, as you may know, the media does not earn money on good news. Bad news is really what makes the money. You have to create this outrage, the negative emotion in the person to really touch the nerve. So that is the money-making strategy. At the same time, there is a psychological effect of keeping people in constant fear, in constant state of nervousness about the world, because this all has reasons of their own, which I will also cover during this show. Let me then explain to you what a citadel actually means and why the name Citadelium was chosen. As you see, the word Citadelium is derived from the word citadel, and citadel is essentially a meme that comes from my industry. It comes from the Bitcoin world. It is a meme that appeared first on Reddit, the social network website where people post and share ideas and news, and then they can upvote and downvote them depending on how interesting they are. So one day, a user who pretended to be a time traveler wrote a post on Reddit that described the future in which Bitcoin indeed took over the monetary and financial system of the world. However, the world that he described was not particularly positive and utopian. It was far from that. So he mentioned the word citadel in his review of that world. Let me read a transcript from the post and just so you can see the origins of the term citadel. What is a citadel? You might wonder. Well, by the time Bitcoin became worth $1,000, services began to emerge for the Bitcoin rich to protect themselves as well as their wealth. It started with expensive safes, then began to include bodyguards, and today, earlies, our term for early adopters, as well as those rich whose wealth survived the transition, live in isolated, gated cities called citadels, where most work is automated. Most such citadels are born out of the fortification used to protect places where Bitcoin mining machines are located. Not everybody liked the term citadel, and there were people who were against it because they thought that the author was promoting this turbulent world, this vision of the future in which there is a lot of dismay, a lot of unrest in the world, in which people essentially decided to live in segregation from each other. However, the Bitcoin crowd decided to adopt the term, as we normally do, and use it for our own purposes. It doesn't mean that we really want that future to come about. You have to understand that the term is not really prescriptive. We do not say that this is how things should be, but the term is more descriptive. So we describe a possible future that may come about, and there is nothing bad about it because I think our knowledge and our prediction is grounded more on realism rather than some optimistic fantasy of the world that Bitcoin will turn everything into wonderful utopia. Because we truly believe that for things to become better, they will necessarily have to become worse. And there is a feature of the Bitcoin community that you may know of in that we like to appropriate different terms. For example, the words Bitcoin maximalist were invented as a derogatory term. However, we liked it so much that we decided to use it in a positive twist and call ourselves Bitcoin maximalists if we apply any labels to ourselves, which essentially describe a position that Bitcoin is the sound money of the future. It is the ultimate store of value that will transition to the status of the global reserve currency of the world. So in a similar manner, we decided to take the word citadel and use it in a positive twist. With that in mind, I also wrote an article in my blog describing what a citadel is. At the end of the article, I came up with my own definition of the word citadel, which of course, like I said before, is not really prescriptive but more descriptive. Let me read it to you. Citadel, a type of private settlement that has the status of a special administrative zone or a sovereign state, owned and operated by a managing company or cooperative, in which the relationship between such a managing party and the settlement's citizenry is strictly contractual, with the former acting as a service provider and the latter as a customer. And in this definition essentially lies the crux of the matter. I wanted to make sure that I describe it in a way that people understand that this relationship between the citadel itself and the citizens of the citadel is strictly contractual. It is a consensual relationship because nobody forces anyone to live in any citadel. You have to be wanting to live there and you have to abide by certain rules, the rules of the citadel. And if we imagine a world of thousands of citadels, then it is clear that people will have a choice where to live. Different citadels will cater to different styles and different religions, different ethnic groups. So the choice will be much broader than it is right now with nation states, which really restrict things like immigration and emigration. They restrict who can enter. Although we can see with the globalist movement the relaxation of such things as migration. However, this is very different and we may cover that in the future episodes. So citadels will be different things for different people. You may as well argue that citadels already exist today. For example, some of the high-end gated communities can be considered citadels because they are places in which individuals with a certain status, normally monetary status, essentially wealthy individuals, or some individuals who have a shared interest in something, they just gather together and they live in their own community. There's also communities around the world that decided to live in a segregated way from the rest of the world, that have their own traditions and that have their own customs and ways of living. For example, there is the Amish community, which is a religious group that lives separately from the rest of the world, and their distinguishing feature is that they don't really like technology. They believe technology is evil and that it corrupts the soul, which has some merit in this, and we may cover it in the future episodes. However, this is the way they live, and they have their own communities, and they have their own structure of society and their own hierarchy. And there are elders who decide what happens and what doesn't happen within the community. At the same time, I also talked about online or digital citadels, which is a slightly different concept, but again, as I mentioned, the citadel concept is just a descriptor term that can be applied to pretty much anything out there, as long as we keep promoting it and for the sake of the future that we want to see happen. So an online citadel is essentially a online community. However, it's not just an interest-based community, such as a community of video gamers or meat lovers or anything like that. It is more resemblant of an actual country. So what do I mean by that? Well, there is a certain traditions, there is culture, there is perhaps a language spoken universally in that community, and there's probably some symbols that they use, and shared values and traditions. Because there exist different people with different views of the world, there will be different types of citadels out there, as I mentioned. So, but there's a subset of Bitcoiners who really like certain features that they want to see appear, or rather reappear in the world. And I would like to describe to you these common features that these Bitcoiners share, including myself. This is where I come from, and this is what I want to cover as well. The first one, of course, is free markets. We all share the idea that free markets can solve any issue a lot better, a lot faster, and a lot more efficient than any government out there. Centralized governance, centralized authoritarian control of the modern nation state does not solve any problem, and you can see how things are just in any country out there. Even the most developed countries like the United States or Canada or the European countries have so many issues that laws upon laws just don't seem to solve them anymore. So this is why we believe in free markets, and this belief is based on some of the economic knowledge that we learn along the way, particularly Austrian economics and a school of thought that comes from such economists as Ludwig von Mises, Murray Rothbard, Hayek, and more modern ones such as Hans Hermann Hoppe and Guido Hülsmann. The next thing that we value highly is individual sovereignty. Individual sovereignty is extremely important to us because we believe in agency. Agency means that each individual is responsible for his actions, and you essentially cancel victim mentality in this state of mind, because when an individual has a personal agency, when an individual has sovereignty, he automatically has a responsibility for every action that he takes. So there is no one to blame for anything that happens to the individual, to his surroundings, to his financial state, to his relationships with other people. No one is to blame but himself. So this is where we come from, and this is the ideology that essentially is the crux of the matter in the world that we are expecting to come about thanks to Bitcoin. Anywhere you go on this globe, you can see that there are various customs and traditions that have been celebrated for thousands of years, some of them, and that it's really important to have these traditions because they keep the people together. And culture is a big part of it because, as you may know, arts and sciences are a manifestation of the man's inner state, a state of mind, a state of heart. And if a man feels liberated, then he is more likely to create his true art that can be enjoyed by the rest of us, because he is not constrained by anything. He can give his everything to this art, and he is really engaged in the process. This is how the world from within manifests without. And family, of course, is a big part of it. This is where real human development happens. In a traditional family that has a mother and a father and hopefully some siblings, an individual develops his character, and with that he develops a sense of responsibility, not just for himself but also for other people. This is why we believe that the restoration of traditional family values are extremely important in what is coming. This is it for today. Thank you for tuning in, and I'm looking forward to recording more episodes and sharing them with you. As always, I accept feedback, and you can drop me a line at thegaia.co by filling out the form, Or you can find me on Twitter and send me a direct message there. Y_Degaya.